It had been such a good running team last year and for much of this year, 2.96 yards per carry the last 4 weeks. Has the quality of the blocking you're getting, not just from the offensive line, but other positions, diminished considerably during those 4 games?
I don't think it's diminished considerably. I think that we're close. I mean, we had a explosive run called back, ball got outside, and, Reek lost leverage on the corner, and he got called for a holding. Otherwise, that was going to be an explosive run. And normally what happens is once you get one of those runs going, things get going, that's where you build the momentum, all right? You get in your groove blocking. And I just think that's where we're trying to get back to, is just get that groove, that rhythm of what we're doing. However, ultimately, for us, it's that how do we maintain efficiency and score points? That's ultimately what we're doing. Defense presents different variables that we have to adjust to, and as long as that we're maintaining our efficiency and gaining yards to score, I mean, that's ultimately what we're trying to do.
I meant to ask Mike yesterday, and I forgot. Wait, so I'll ask you. What that four-down series against Green Bay, early in the fourth quarter.
Yep.
Why wasn't Tyreek Hill on the field?
Well, we're down inside down in the tight red zone, and once we got in there, we liked our heavier personnel groups trying to invite a defense to run on, and we just didn't execute. And we were close on two of the plays, and then the last one just we just didn't execute well. I think that's the thing that when we look at from the game is that you can talk about many different things. However, it's execution. You change 4 plays in that game, outcome could be drastically different, and that's what we need to improve on.
Missed the block there on the first run.
Yeah, it was the angle of the way he thought the safety was going to trigger on the run. He stayed back, so it changed his angle. He had to change his angle to get him. So it's like when you think he's in quarters run fit safety, you think that he's going to see the run and trigger, so your angle is going to have to be flat at first. Well, he kept backing up, and then when the ball bounced, you're now out leveraged. So he played it more like it was a punt like 4, and he was backing up almost like kind of 2-ish. So it just changed his angle, and that's, it's the difference between getting the ball down inside, the 5 and scoring. So it's a learning lesson, but I mean, it's not the first time it happens when you're anticipating the quarters run fit, and then he backs up and you're just out leveraged. So if we were in the open field, say we're on the -40, there's more space to it, but when you get low in that, when you cut into it, that's where all of a sudden he has room to catch up to you.
But Tyreek isn't that part of the enclosed package, the red zone package?
Yeah, he's in there. It was just that play, that one was just, he was out. And then when we got in there, we were going heavier personnel groupings that he just wasn't in there. It wasn't anything intentional. It was just the grouping for what we were doing.
I wanted to ask you about
this week's practice. Obviously, we know Tehran is on a very no practice, limited snap count for the moment. But now you've got Kendall Lamb with the elbow injury. Patrick Paul, obviously you need him at left tackle because Tehran is not there, but I would also view him as a viable starting option at right tackle. How do you balance that work in terms of if you need him at right tackle, the comfort that he's going to have?
You balance it through individual periods, you scout team, you use all available tools in the practice day to make sure that all the variables are getting done. So you can do one variable, and then in the scout team you can do another variable, and individual you can do another variable. So I know Butch and the guys, they make sure they're always constantly using all the time available to make sure we're getting all the work, plus walkthroughs and stuff like that.
You coach that position. How difficult is it for a tackle to go from left to right?
Not as easy as you think, but at the same time, the guys have to get used to the versatility. Unless you're when you're the starter, it's a little bit less. But ultimately, at the end of the day, it's to play that position, being versatile and being able to do both sides is helpful. Because I was a left guard for 3 years, and I was a center and tackle before all that. And once you get into a routine of certain things, I was 3 years. Then it was all of a sudden you go to the other side, and it's kind of like, what do I do over here? So that's why we were trying to maintain versatility constantly with the guys.
With Patrick Where would you say he is in the evaluation and assessment of, because he got the starting opportunity earlier in the season and then everybody didn't have glowing reviews of him. Where is he in that development right now?
I think he's the greatest thing about your rookie year is always the hardest, and your expectations. You go out, you get an op, and then you learn, you grow, stick to the process. For us right now, we're seeing really good signs with his development. We're really excited for his future with us.
Dave, I wanted to follow up on Dave's question about the 4 downs opportunity near the Packers goal line. Mm-hmm. On the 4th down, it was some bad luck where Alec kind of tripped over Lamb's foot that took him out of the play. Mm-hmm. In your opinion, did Tua maybe have a chance to pull the trigger on Smythe, or was he covered too tightly on that play?
Potentially. It was one where the variable of what we anticipated, they kind of gave us a little bit a different look. But ultimately, that whole sequence is something that we really think if we could have executed that better, it could have helped us in the game. So there's, like, to you guys' point, like, that's when you look at it, you can say certain areas, but we look at just a couple of drives of final execution. If we could make sure that we improve upon that, that'll be the thing that'll help us going forward.
Frank, in a short yardage situation, not just that one, but let's just say 4th and 1 at midfield. Mm-hmm. If you want to go for it and you want to keep the ball on the ground, which running back do you most have confidence in to get that yard, whether the blocking is there or whether he has to move the pile himself?
Which one specifically? Which child is your favorite, Frank? I think we have confidence in all of our guys. So it's not like the way we build the packaging. It's not necessarily, hey, it's him over him. Is that we try and go into games and knowing that, all right, in certain areas we want to make sure we're giving the guys and spreading the adequate reps. So like I have confidence in all of our backs to be able to do what we need to do in critical moments like that.
Is there any team in your mind besides Philadelphia where it doesn't matter what defensive look you're getting on 3rd and 1 or goal line from the 1 or 2 yard line, we're going to run the ball no matter what look you give us? Does it work, you think, well for anyone against Philly, or is it unwise to force your will physically against certain defensive looks?
I don't know. I mean, Philly does their sneak thing, and everyone tried to implement the same thing, and they're really the only ones that have had maintained success with it. I think ultimately it's like there's certain elements of core concepts and principles that you believe that you can execute versus all things, and there's other plays that you want to use to attack the defense and the variabilities and the structural conflicts that you think you can get. So I think it's a balance of things that core principles that you believe in that you want to get done. Like we want to be able to run strong side outside zone. And we want to be able to run complementary runs off of those principles. We want to be able to run play pass off of the same thing and make sure we distribute our ball. So it's like there's principles that starting point that drive out that you're saying we need to do this because it's our core beliefs and convictions. So I think that's your driving force in anything you do. And then each week you have your variables for the attack of the opponent.
What keeps you up at night about the Jets defense? The D-line, the secondary, what specifically?
I think it's always like they have a very good front. They're guys who've played together in the same system for a while. They're very versed at their coverage system. When they have played really good defense and they're extremely disruptive. So I think there's certain. I mean, obviously it's easy to say they're rushed because they are very talented, but overall their defense, just like. They're a challenge, and no opponent in the league is anything that you can ever say, hey, it's this. It's going to be a opponent that's ready to play for us, and I think all areas of their defense, when they work together, is obviously very formidable. That's why they've been a upper-level defense. So I think it's never one thing. It's all things because you got to weigh in all of it areas as far as your plan for the game planning.
To this decision to make Snoop the backup quarterback or the primary backup this week or moving forward? I don't know what the answer to that question is.
I just think his overall, like the way that, you'd say when he came in the game, like if we didn't have turnovers in the Indy game, we feel that the game could have gone into our favor because of the way we were running the football. A couple of little miscues, but ultimately, when Snoop was in there, we were operating efficiently. His ability to execute and distribute, we just feel like was a good addition, and that's why we felt like that's the route we wanted to go.
And what is the hope for Skylar moving forward?
We still have confidence in Skylar. We know it. We just felt that Snoop right now, with what he was able to bring, and a certain area of also his mobility on playing outside of extending plays was also something that is always good, especially when you have your starter has a certain skill set in the pocket and your backup has a different skill set. That's a challenge on the defense when all of a sudden your game plan goes towards pocket passer distribution as another guy who has extending plays and has mobility. Having that balance is also because it changes the game plan for defensive coaches.
Any thought or actually, I had a better question for you. Overloaded offensive line, short yards. This team has short yardage issues. Why is it that we haven't seen a sixth offensive lineman work on the line in those situations yet?
For us?
Yes.
Just because for us, it's like we like using our tight ends, and we like the versatility that tight ends give us. It's like in my time in New Orleans, we used heavy offensive linemen a bunch. And when I was in Los Angeles, we used heavy offensive linemen a bunch. It's like, okay, what do you do? Okay, it's either run or action. Few teams use the linemen and do things outside of the conventional norms. So we like the ability of having tight ends with, as we viewed, a complete skill set that allow us to do our full offensive output. But it's on us and as coaches to make sure we put them in positions where, we run schemes that are complementary to their skill set. Because most times, guys, when they bring in the six offensive linemen, they all run the same play. They run just power no puller and try and mash it up in there. And we don't run that stuff. So we run outside zone. So it's like you're going to put a six offensive lineman who's going to man reach a 9 technique, play in space. It's like on the edge. That's better for a tight end skill set. That's what we try and do.
Would you use Huntley in short yardage now that he's active?
It's an option as we go through each week and just what's the defense and how does it present itself. It's not outside the realm of possibility. Ultimately, though, we're just going to use the guys that are available and what is necessary to make sure that we are, core principle, maximizing efficiency of our offensive production, score points. So all options are always on the table.
How much was Bowser missed, do you think, in terms of setting the edge last Thursday? I was going to ask you what Kamara at this point needs to do to maybe get your thoughts more to play.
Yeah. Tyus, whether he's missed, yeah, of course. I think Tyus has a presence out there. He's just familiar with the scheme, and he's been through a lot of battles, particularly in those situations. But I don't want to take anything away from Q Bell. I thought Q Bell went out there and played really well and continues to flourish when he gets opportunities. So excited about him. As far as Mo is concerned, he's just a very young player who's still trying to earn trust amongst his teammates. And that only comes through consistent, repeated, positive action. When he's out there, can he make plays? Can he be impactful? Yes. As the games become more important, it's hard to live through some of those potential rookie mistakes that can occur. So, again, it's pleased with where he's trending, but practice is very much different than games against these opposing competition particularly when you're vying for playoff spots and things of that nature. So, as he continues to grow in his technique and fundamentals and his attention to detail in the scheme, he'll learn more reps.
Does Chubb look to you? Oh, I'm sorry, John. Yeah, we're both going to ask on Chubb. Does Chubb look to you like he's ready to play, or is it too? And I know obviously that's a decision that you, Chris, Mike, et cetera, will make collectively. Yeah. But how close does he look to you to being able to help in an NFL game?
Yeah, that's difficult to say, right? I'm basing it off like 7 full speed reps, so I'm really just incredibly happy for the kid. I know the work he's put forth just to get to this point, so I'm sure it's going to be some time just to gain confidence and get back to where he feels comfortable going out there and playing in an NFL game.
Coach McDaniel noted that on film he saw some guys stopping their feet on defense, not running through the tackle. in all your years of experience, do you believe that that can be a result of the cold?
No. It's one of those things where, as a coach, you're always trying to predict what's going to happen in the game. Our poor tackling in this showing was certainly one I didn't see coming. Was it the cold? Who knows? Was it playing on a Thursday? Who knows? It could be a variety of things. You got to give credit to them, right? Just in terms of breaking tackles. Josh Jacobs is not an easy guy to bring down. Do we need to be better with our technique and fundamentals in like wrapping up, driving our feet, not diving off the diving board? Absolutely. But I certainly wouldn't attribute that to the cold. I've coached in Houston, or we've gone to Green Bay and we've won a number of places where it hasn't been a concern. So I certainly wouldn't put that on the weather.
We've Storm Duck, first quarter, the touchdown pass in front of him,
Yeah.
and then the Josh Jacobs run, he's there. What about the teaching moments? And I'm not
Yeah,
criticizing
yeah,
him at
yeah.
all. I know he's had a good rookie season, but what do you put your arm around him? Do you yell at him? Does that depend on how each guy is? What's your policy on that?
Each one of these experiences for him are new, right? And it was unfortunate in that particular game where the plays that kind of hit us, he was right by, right? And really had a negative impact on those plays. So they're all learning experiences. And you try to make sure that he understands why he didn't have the success on those particular plays and coach him through them. That way, when those same plays present themselves again, he'll now make the play with confidence. But it does me no good just yelling at a kid, right? Particularly if you don't know if he's been in this situation, and you as a coach have kind of like coached him through it so he can have the success. So that's all we try to do with him. Again, have so much confidence in that kid. He stepped up for us in some huge situations, and certainly not going to lose confidence in him now.
I say Aaron Rodgers, you say
Future Hall of Famer. Yeah, I mean, he's a stud. He's one of the few guys left in the league that I've played with, right? Him and Calais. Mercedes Lewis, maybe another one. But has all the arm talent in the world. A lot like Stafford, where there isn't anything he hasn't seen. A lot of times, if you're not great with your disguise and what you're showing pre-snap, he's going to figure it out. And you're going to try to do everything you can to try to affect him with your rush, right? Because that's probably the one thing that he can't really control. So going to put a lot of onus on the guys up front. Going to have a good game. And when we do bring pressure, it'll be calculated. I did not. I did miss a sack on him. I do remember that. I could.
Did you stop your feet?
He was just. It was really cold. No. I'm kidding. That is a joke. No, he was just faster than me. So I was rushing off the edge. He bailed and kind of gave ground and ran around me, and I lost the edge. But yeah, man, heck of a player. God, dog. And he has weapons too. So we're certainly cognizant of those guys.
When you have a player like Javon Holland, obviously there were a lot of expectations for him coming into the season, coming into his career because of his talent level. How would you assess how he's played, and do you feel like the injuries, the setbacks have impacted how he's played this season or what you've asked of him to do?
Yeah, I think just kind of being in and out of the lineup has certainly affected some of that. But it's unfortunate the stats haven't been there for Javon. When he's on the field, you feel his impact, even though it may not show up necessarily on the stat sheet. I think the games he's missed, you could feel it, particularly on our side of the ball, on some of those plays where you thought if he would have been there, those plays perhaps would have been made. So, again, I love Javon. I think he's a heck of a player, and those stats, they'll come. They'll come with the snaps.
We've Green Bay scores 10 points in the last 2 minutes of the first half. And there were a lot of missed tackles in that series. What happened there?
I'm trying to think back. The touchdown before half, was that the short yard? Was that the short run? The run from the 1 yard line, or was that on? That was the missed tackle on 3rd and 2.
Right. Yeah.
All right. So yeah. So we were essentially in red 2, right? They were in a 3-by-1 set. They motioned to it. Jordan Brooks kind of stayed on the line. He can be in more relation to 2 there. And then Storm took a chance and went inside to try to make the tackle, missed it, ends up capturing the edge, right? Storm, again, another young player, needs to set the edge there. We'll chase that thing from inside out. We'll get him down on the ground. Hope we stop him from a first down. Definitely shouldn't score a touchdown. Prior to half, what really contributed to those 3 points was Jalen Ramsey, right? He missed a tackle on the tight end, I believe, on the sideline, which kind of extended the drive, put him in more of a manageable field goal situation. So again, it was tackling in both of those cases. Unfortunately, don't know why it happened, but that game, sometimes the ball just needs to bounce your way a little bit, right? Like we're about 2 feet away from having 4 takeaways, right? Third play of the game with Sealer on a sack, right? How close was that to being a takeaway and a huge play in the game? Cater Kohu, the play he gets hurt on, the ball's in the air forever, very close to a takeaway. Jalen Ramsey on a corner blitz tips the ball, close to a takeaway. And then obviously the lateral that we all thought was a lateral, where Saran picks up and goes for a tug. So the missed tackles, they stink. Like, definitely didn't see that happening. Don't anticipate that happening again. Hoping that was a lesson so that we play these cold games and hopefully they're meaningful ones at the end. We have no excuse. We've been there. We know what we need to do. But sometimes the football guys aren't shining upon you, man. Like, the guys played hard, and I think that showed the second half. Like, they didn't stop trying to score points in the second half. If they could have scored 50, they would have scored 50. They scored 6. Did we miss a couple tackles in the second half, too? They had a check down go for like 40-something yards to the running back. Yeah, it stinks, but there were play opportunities there to be made, and unfortunately, in this particular game, we just didn't make them.
Saran's play, is that one that you guys submit to the league and see what they say?
I don't know who submits what to the league. You know, you get an apology letter, like, if it happens enough times, I'm still gonna lose my job. They don't care. Like, hey, sorry we messed up. Great. Is this official gonna stand in front of you guys and do this? I don't think so. So, God bless them. They have a difficult job. But again, I think sometimes, like, the football guys got to shine upon you, man. You got to make those things happen.
How tough was that to stomach?
I've been in this league a long time, man. So I've had that AFC championship loss last year stings a lot more than this one. Again, I think there's lessons to be learned in this game that hopefully pay dividends in those 2 games that ultimately would be cold in Cleveland and in New York at the end of the season.
Brooks is an aggressive physical player. He had a few aggressive physical plays after the game. Kind of opened some eyes when he said he thought that the overall defensive performance was soft. I'm sure you've heard the comment. What was your reaction to it?
Yeah, I think that's Jordan, right? It's one of those things when you're talking after the game, you're reacting purely off emotion, and I'm sure that once he watched the tape, I wouldn't be surprised if he changed his tune, because that game, the missed tackles you could say they kind of equate to softness in the moment, but when you see the why they occurred, you would see that softness had nothing to do with it. I give credit to the Green Bay Packers for just making plays and making us miss.
Trying to figure out how to word this question, because talking about the bad luck, I can think back to the Buffalo loss. You guys had a tip pass on that last drive that could have been picked off as well. The Cardinals game when Murray had his arm going forward and Calais swats it back and it bounces right back to him like a basketball. Like, it's been a lot of those bad bounces.
The Colts game.
Yeah, I'm not
Jalen's free.
informing you of anything you don't already know. My question is, how much do you harp on that, or what's the teaching point when you have the defensive meetings? Are you showing guys that, being like, we have to keep coming because this can happen, or do you not focus on it that much at all?
I think the first thing you do is you make sure you're hopping on every loose ball, regardless of whether you know what happened, right? That's case in point with Saran. The other thing you're just trying to coach is where is that 1/10 of a second can that be gained? Is that better timing on a blitz? Is that not being in your stance ready to play? That now, rather than just being there and getting there for the tip and him just having control of the ball, now you're being there a second early and that ball's out. So it's always those little intricate details that you're trying to coach guys through that takes them from good to great.
Obviously, you have a talent in Jalen Ramsey who is comfortable, efficient, familiar with shadowing a player. From a defensive coordinator standpoint, I want to know the cons to having a player shadow a guy.
Yeah, I think the stress isn't on Jalen so much as it puts pressure on everybody around them to know their jobs. When you can play somebody into the boundary or at a particular position, then everybody else, they kind of fall in place and they just know they got to learn that one particular spot. Once you start moving guys around, there's a trickle down with everybody around them. So to me, that's where the weight is. The weight is on the other guys to kind of, all right, hey, this guy's sitting at number 2 in the slot. Now I'm this. This guy's number 1 to the boundary. Now I'm this. It's all the pieces around them that have to know how they fit together based on where that guy is now.
Sounds
guessing Jalen isn't shadowing anybody on Sunday?
We'll find out. Find out on Sunday.
When he's in the nickel, obviously I've heard the theory that you always want your best players closer to the ball and line of scrimmage, especially somebody as physical as him. What are the pros and cons to him being in there at the nickel spot?
Yeah, I think the pros are just what you said, right? He's around the ball, he's around the action. You can feel his presence more in both his physicality in the run game. I've seen the guys set edges on tackles, right, where a lot of nickels aren't capable of doing that. And then obviously, like, you can blitz him. You have a little bit more blitz flexibility when he's there. The negatives to that are your potential matchups on the outside if you don't have a player that you feel confident in, right? Particularly if there's like a size deficiency or things of that nature. And then sometimes just his skill set isn't necessarily perfect for some of those jitterbug guys that you have at the slot position, right? He's kind of, you see straight line fast, has good change of direction, but you get some of those guys like the Wes Welker types, back in the day. From a matchup standpoint, just doesn't work in your favor. So you kind of pick your spots based on opponent, based on what we're trying to do that week schematically. And again, the beauty when Cater is out there is you really don't know when we're going to pop it out on you, from an offensive perspective. When you have to substitute it, as soon as you trot a guy in, they're going, hey, 5's going to nickel, and you lose that element of surprise.
How do you like to explain to players how to handle the opposing quarterback going into a slide, possibly about to go into a slide, might be stepping out of bounds, might not? Like, it seems real delicate. How do you try to explain?
That is incredibly difficult. And you're obviously referencing the kid in Houston situation. I think throughout the week, you always watch, like, what's in this quarterback's DNA? Like, what's he done in the past? And really, Trevor Lawrence in the past, he's been a guy that wasn't sliding a whole lot, right? He was going to try to run through you. He's a big dude. So I can understand why something like that could occur. You would hope that, again, the onus is on the defensive guy, and rightfully so, right? Those guys are protected for a reason, and I get it. You just hope if you see a guy going in that slide position, you have to pull up. You don't have a choice, and I know that's a difficult thing, but it's no different than the Poyer hit in the Buffalo game, right? That is such a bang play, and for him to hit somebody, even when you say in the strike zone and not make contact with the helmet, is so much easier said than done, right? So it's terrible for both parties, right? For all parties involved. As a defensive guy, again, I err on the side of aggression, but if you see that, you have to try and pull up.
You mentioned the slide thing, and I can understand how that's a difficult play, but I always wonder about the sideline plays too, especially you see Mahomes always doing this.
Man.
That was the Minshew, Javon Holland.
Yeah, and you've seen it, Minshew and Javon Holland. You've seen it with Mahomes, where he looked like he's going to go out and then he turns it up for another 6-7 yards. So, again, we're going to try to hit you, okay? And if that's what you've shown on tape, don't expect it. Don't be surprised if you get hit late.
If you could take us through on the first punt what Malik should have done.
Well, again, in a perfect world, he recognizes spin, plays the drift, and catches the football with a fair catch. In the scenario that transpired, once you lose the rhythm of the ball, don't make a bad play worse. So in that case, he should have aborted and got out of the way.
Danny, I don't want to pile on Malik, but there was another play, and this was the second time, I think, in 3 weeks or 4 weeks, where he fielded a punt, like at the 5-yard line. And in both instances, there was a penalty on the return where the team was backed up to start the offense. Do you have a set rule as you're inside the 10, leave it alone, or do you leave it up to discretion?
There's several different guidelines we use, and it's based on a lot of things. It's based on where the ball is being punted from. What's the space? What's the call? Are we in a single? Are we in double? What are we playing on the gunners in terms of them getting down the field? So there's a lot of things that go into that. And, we have great confidence in Malik, but those are some of the, like every position across the board, there's growing pains with young players, and that's part of it. We got to minimize them, but that's part of the National Football League and young players. But we have complete confidence, and we'll keep working and keep practicing, and hopefully those things turn the other way.
Am I safe in assuming in a perfect world you'd rather he not field a punt at the 5-yard line?
Well, absolutely not. That's not what I'm saying. It depends on the situation. There's times that, that's a good play. There's times that that's maybe not the right play. So there's a lot of things that go into it situationally in the game.
He seemed to slip on that when he was, and a lot of guys, the field was what it was.
Yeah.
Was there cleat issues?
Well, for most of our guys were wearing 7 studs and didn't have a lot of issue. You could see going into the game, and historically that's always been a little bit of an issue. Whether it's be the late day dew games or the night games when it's colder with this surface being heated from underneath. And again, that's part of it, and understanding don't make a bad play worse. And to put it in the simplest terms, and that's regardless of position of one of the things we try and echo.
What is the skill with Malik that makes you think he can be a good punt returner long term?
Well, when a young player comes in who doesn't have a lot of history, it's an opportunity to help make the football team. And a lot of guys that have the skill set of a returner or a defensive back who have good ball skills, who understand reading football in the air and adjusting to it, have an opportunity. Now it's going to be different, when you have bodies involved and people run at you. But he's done a great job on developing, from when we've got him in the draft. And as I said, we're so happy to have him. We just got to eliminate some of the, the issues on this climb to what we feel is a very good player.
And one more thing about Malik, he's a very tough kid, isn't he? He took a big hit that game. I thought I saw him knock down Van Ness, number 90, from the slot, right?
No, he's a lot of the things that we're looking for. He's smart, he's tough, he's physical. He's a good football player. But as I said, we're got to eliminate some of the small things with young players. But that's part of it. You hate to say it, and you hate to live with it. But there's a long list of things that we really like about him as a player.
How hopeful are you to have Blake for Sunday?
Again, that's a work in progress. We just opened his window, and finally able to get some work on the field. We get a little bit yesterday, we'll get more today. So that's a work in progress.
Danny, on the opening kickoff, it looked like Chop and Tyndall got blocked, but Elijah is right there. Should he have taken on that blocker, or should he have tried to make the tackle? What's the problem?
He did take it. It's not that they. We had 2 guys sort of play into one another, so that put us in a little bit of a bind, and then there was a lot of space then for Elijah to have to defend. So there's like anything, there's some plays that you see where it's you can look at one major issue and point the finger at it. That play we had a couple things. Maybe not an ideal location on the kick. 2 guys end up in the same gap. To create a lot of space. And again, like we've talked about in here, against a very, very good player. So you put those things together, and they're out to the 43-yard line to start the game.
This has nothing to do with your team, but I'm just curious. Maybe the best kicker of all time now is having trouble making.
Yeah.
How much? And you're in this position, and not to ask about him, obviously, but in general, how much of kicking is mental?
A large part of it.
What percent would you put a?
Yeah, I wouldn't, but I would. When you take, and I'm going to put Justin Tucker in the exceptional player at a position. When a guy that's had the success that he's had, and until this year, had the one hiccup maybe 8 or 9 years ago where he had a little bit of an issue in a year, but every other year he's going to be 95%. So, unless you see something jump out at you physically, which I don't see because he's still striking the ball at a high level. It's the mental part. It's big. I don't want to put a number on it, but it's not talent. That's for sure.
Again, this isn't about your team, but in your career, have you had kickers? Things like just mentally something happens and you got.
Oh, absolutely. and it's part of it. And I'm not going to mention we had a year where we had a guy start off 16 for 16 with several game winners and overtime winners, and the next 2 games, he missed 3 games and 1 kick and the first kick of the next game. So a guy that's 16-0 with multiple game winners all of a sudden misses 4 out of 5 kicks. And again, it's part of the process. That just is a position where when you're not out there a lot and there's only one thing that people expect and want to see, when that's not executed, it's the magnifying glass is on it.
I wanted to ask you about Green Bay and the kickoffs. Was that weather related, and are you going to see more shorter kickoffs because of the change in the climate, change in the weather? And is there truth that the ball gets heavier, harder when it's colder?
Well, it gets harder and doesn't compact as much is what happens. It doesn't get heavy, but it's like anything. Take a ball and put it in the freezer just for fun, and then try and squeeze it, and you're going to be like, wow, it's a different animal. So obviously, without the ball compacting as much, it's not going to travel as far. So yeah, I think anytime you have, when you start getting cold, it can have a factor. But I go back to, last year when we played in Kansas City in the playoff game. By the end of that game, both kickers are kicking touchbacks. So it's a moving target, and some days guys are hitting the ball well, some days they're not. Then you add obviously the game plan part of it in terms of what you're trying to do and how you're trying to kick the ball. But simple rule though, yes, wind and cold, you're going to see probably more opportunities in the return game.
How did Patrick Morris do?
Did good for his first time out. It's always good to see guys that put in the work, that get injured in preseason and have to go 4 months before they get an opportunity. So again, another good young player that we're excited to have and get more on his plate and see where it goes.
You guys had a field goal where Green Bay jumped. Your guys didn't move. Now, from scrimmage, wouldn't the offense touch the defensive guy and get the pimp? But your guy, is that different on special
No,
teams?
it's not different. But you don't need. As soon as that guy crosses, that's such a, for lack of a better term, face-to-face play. I mean, there's not a lot of separation there. As soon as that guy breaks the neutral zone, he almost, in fact, is touching us before we even have a, But it was a nice job with the cadence, being able to get the 5 back, to be able to come back, bring the offense back on the field, and get the first down. So change of, you look at all those not change of possession plays where you're able to get the offense back to get the first down. But those plays are so, that guy moves, he's almost impossible not for him to have contact. But the rule stays the same.
I know we talk about things that weren't called, and if you expect a call, did Julian Hill get a block in the back on a kickoff return?
Again, I can't comment. But again, as I look at it, whichever team that would be on, I would have expected that call to be made. If it was us on the return team, I would have expected that to be a call.
And then field goal, this is very minor. You made some changes on the line. Jackson Carman not there anymore. Liam and Deshaun Hand were out there together.
Well, a lot of that has to do with the game day. Who's active, who's inactive, and
Do you have any special teams internships available?
That's my minutia. I'm sorry.
We got roles in here. Told you that.
Yeah, I love it. Know your role and excel at it.
That's it. So one more thing then. On the
Special teams be right.
Well, I've got questions.
We'll have to spend some time in the off season.
Yes. So the punt that Malik muffs, when that ball is rolling around, it looked like Saran and Quentin Bell had a chance. I know it's tough.
Yeah.
Can you teach how to recover that?
Well, yeah, we do, and those are drills you do, but it's.
I mean, that ball's just hopping around, and Green Bay is there too.
Yeah, and their guys getting ridden out by 2 guys blocking him. So obviously, him having first access. But yeah, those are all, how and when to recover kicks. Yeah, that's part of some of the drill stuff you do. Absolutely.
The soft narrative, which obviously we've heard from Deshaun Elliott, Jordan Brooks talked about the team playing soft. He didn't say they are soft. I want to ask you this question. Some would associate soft with not dominating at the line of scrimmage in the trenches on both sides. Is this team dominating enough in the trenches where it can win a lot? And could that be a measurement of being soft?
Yes, it can be a measurement of being soft. Do we dominate in the trenches? I would say you'd have to look at our short yardage on both sides. I don't know what's going on the other side as far as that, but I know offensively we need to be better in short yardage situations. So if that's the definition, then right now, if the shoe fits, we have to wear it until we prove otherwise. You know, that's the great thing about sports is it doesn't matter what people say about you. You get an opportunity to go prove people right or wrong. And until we consistently are better in short yardage situations and whatever else that people are judging it on, we have to wear that, unfortunately.
And the quality of inline blocking you've gotten from Julian over the past month, obviously it was very good early in the year.
Mm-hmm.
You all are at 2.96 per carry over the past month. Has Julian's blocking dropped off at all?
No, it hasn't. No, Julian's actually done well. You know, it's funny because I know things like, and I'm not against this organization at all either, but like PFF, you know, sometimes your reputation helps you. You know, one time I got on Kittle's about not having a good game, and then he comes in, he's like, well, PFF gave me an 88 and da-da-da, and I'm like, okay. So I get, you know, because, you know, sometimes a guy may make a tackle that he's blocking, but it may not be his fault. It may be the back should have went outside or someone came off a block early and this and that. So there's a lot of things that go into it. But he's done a good job. You know, do I wish it was better? I always wish it was better with all those guys. Run game, pass game, all of that. So, but his blocking has not dropped off. He's done a good job in pass protection too, which is obviously critical so one can go back there and throw it around. So he's continuing to improve on a lot of little things that maybe people don't see or don't show up. But I'm pleased with the direction he's headed and trending.
You don't think the shoulder injury has impacted his performance or play?
Initially, you know, coming back, I think it, you know, is feeling this way a little bit the first game back, which is to be expected when you pop your shoulder out like that. And he did come back earlier than what we thought he would be able to come back. So, but I don't feel like that's been an issue with him, you know, since maybe the first game.
How happy are you that Chris Greer signed Jonnu for 2 years and not just one?
Yeah. Well, I'm good with it. You know, Jonnu is getting better every week as well, improving on some stuff. You know, there's some things we got to, you know, continue to clean up with him and all that. But, you know, I'm happy with first off, how he's fit in that room. I think if you talk to guys that have played for me and all that, it's not an easy room by any stretch of the imagination. And so if you can fit in that room and get along with the guys and all that like he has, especially coming in as a veteran, you know, a lot of times the young guys, they don't know any better. But coming in with the veteran, he's been with, 3 or 4 teams? And so he's seen a lot of different things. And the fact that he's fit in well and, you know, hasn't come in and tried to step on toes. You know, Durham's the leader in that room. And he's done a really good job with that.
When Tanner was lost for the year, was Jack signed, John, with the thinking of we just need another body as depth, or was Jack still signed with the intent of pushing Durham and obviously Julian to a larger extent for the inline blocking role?
I think probably more the first than the latter. You know, just learning the offense and being able to fit in, there's a lot of nuances and all that. So, you know, I wouldn't expect to get the best version of him, you know, if we had to play him immediately. You know, being here a couple of weeks and seeing some things on the scout team when he's done. You know, I try to coach those guys when they're doing scout team work. And he seems to be a fairly quick learner and picking up stuff. It's just seeing the shades of gray that happen on game day to see how he can handle that.
Just some of the nuance of that position in this offense is obviously one of the more, I would say, high-level complex to understand in the league. How much would you say Jonnu's recent production coincides with more familiarity in the offense?
A significant amount. I think if you notice early on, in fact, I think someone asked in here like why he wasn't playing more or something along that line. And, you know, I always tell the guys there's a little bit of anxiety being in this offense at our position. Like I said, besides the quarterback, we probably have the most on our plate. And so I didn't want to put him out in a situation. I always tell the guys, I'm not going to let you drown. So I'm going to put you out there, but I'm not going to put you in a situation where you're just you can't do it. And so as I got a better feel for him and how he learns and some of the stuff that he really had a good grasp on, allowed me to give him a little more playing time as he got more comfortable, because I know what kind of athlete, what kind of person he is, and he's very prideful and he doesn't like making mistakes, and I didn't want to crush his confidence or make him second guess things and all that. So it's just been a process of him, a combination of earning playing time and then some of the stuff that we're asking him to do that he's really comfortable with now. So you're allowing to see his skill set and see him flourish.
How different is it to go from like a zone blocking to that inline blocking, and just are some guys better at one or the other? And when you're in those short yardage situations,
Yes.
that's where it shows up.
Well, that's where the man blocking schemes, especially at our position, like this weekend, the guys we're going against are, 275, 260. We're giving up 20 pounds. So you better win with technique is the first thing. And then just being able to have that core strength and that ability to anchor, that's something that Julian is really good at. He's able to anchor and hold guys at the line of scrimmage, so to speak, or limit the penetration so that we can try to get through the hole before it closes and have success. So when you're doing primarily zone blocking, obviously we're working with the tackles or the fullback or the other tight end, and so now it's a half a man. So now the size isn't as big of a deal. So it just depends on the scheme you're in and the type of player that you are from a weight standpoint, and or your ability. Like Julian, he's 250, but he can anchor and block against guys 270, 275. So it's just a unique skill to be able to be a man blocker as opposed to a zone blocker.
Jon, earlier, Omar was asking Frank Smith about not running the 6 offensive line package, the jumbo package there, and he said Frank Smith said the tight ends are better suited for that job.
Yes.
Why, in your opinion, are your guys better suited for that job?
Well, usually out there you're going to face movement with the guys, with the defenders. The other thing, and I'm going to get beat up for saying this, but it is very hard to hear out there on the road being one more man removed. I know we had 2 false starts on Saturday or whatever day we played, Thursday. I was in Kansas City and we moved a tackle for a playoff game against the Colts to be another tight end. And after 3 plays, it was that was done. Just jumping off sides, not hearing, laid off the ball. It's easy on paper, but it's a little bit harder. I know some teams do that as a habit, and usually that guy is someone that's probably had some history as playing tight end and doing all that. And since we're not going to throw the ball to that guy anyway, why it's better just to use one of our guys.
With Durham, how has he handled the loss of snaps or opportunities? I mean, this is a guy who was the 3rd leading receiver on the team last year. His whole career, he's been a heavy workload guy, and now he's kind of relegated to a role.
Yeah.
How?
He's been fantastic. He helps the guys. He's ready to go. Just again, depend on the packages and the matchups that we get. Depends on really the reps for all 3 of those guys. I think all 3 might have started at different times, technically, being in on the first play. So, like I said, in our room, we know it's going to be a collective effort to get our jobs done. And if you're a selfish person, you're not going to fit in that room. If you're a sensitive person, you're not going to fit in that room. And neither one of those words apply to Durham. Like I said, he's the leader in that room, and he's always ready when he's called on. And I'm sure as these remaining 5 or 6 games, whatever it is we have left in this regular season, that he'll continue on that. And all of a sudden, one game he's going to have 50 snaps, and so it won't be that big of an issue. But he's been tremendous.
I had asked Anthony Weaver about Storm Duck, and the touchdown pass he was right there, and then the John Jacobs run, he's right there. Do you put your arm around Storm and say, "Hey kid, better luck next time," and this is how we teach, or do you yell at him? How do you handle the teaching moment there?
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, there's definitely never a better luck next time. There's always a coaching point to it. I think with him, he's a rookie who's learning stuff on the fly, and he plays corner in the NFL. Stuff like that is going to happen. So what we try to do in the film room, on the sideline, throughout every opportunity, is just use them as teaching lessons. And the conversation I had with him after that game with some things that didn't go the way he wanted was just don't make those repeat mistakes. And if we can learn from that and not continue to have the same thing happen over and over, then he's getting better. And you're going to see that progress onto the field with his production. But he's been doing an amazing job for us, and he had some learning lessons in that game, and it's going to happen.
What is it about Storm that's allowed him to have this elevated role as an undrafted rookie?
Yeah, I think it's he does what he's asked to do in terms of showing up every day, preparing, applying his technique, and working on his technique and his communication with his teammates. So in the meeting room, like he's naturally a more quiet guy, but in his mind, he's always asking questions, and he asks the right questions, and you can tell he's preparing to be in that spotlight. So when he's had opportunities, he's been extremely solid. And as a coach, especially for me, the guys who play, you have some level of trust in them. That trust is what gives you the confidence, for them to be out there. So he's just done a really good job at building trust by doing what we've asked him to do, and by playing with his teammates and communicating and doing his job. So he's done what we've asked him to do, and that's allowed him to be on the field.
At this point on a Thursday midday, did you see enough from Cater yesterday to suggest he could still be effective despite the package?
That stuff I kind of leave up to Kyle and them as they're working with him. Obviously, we have all different preparations. If you have guys, if you don't have guys, and we try to do a really good job at cross-training and preparing everybody to be able to do multiple roles, so you don't go into a game and you lose one guy and now you can't do what you practiced all week to do. So I would say, we're preparing for every option available, and we'll have a great plan no matter what happens.
This could be the last we see of Cam Smith this season unless he's activated for the last game or potential playoff game. Most of the passes thrown in his coverage area were caught this year. Where's the biggest room for growth where he simply has to get better at these one or two things to be an effective NFL player?
Yeah, the big thing that I want to work on with him is just that continued confidence in his technique and attacking the football, when it's down the field. And not just covering the guy, but you are at the point where you are going to take the football back and just continuing to refine that technique. What I think will continue to help that is his play strength. And when he was on IR earlier in the year, he was working on getting stronger and getting his body in position, for that play strength. And that's going to continue to grow with him. And I think as that continues to improve, as he gets his feet underneath him more from a technique standpoint, which he improved drastically. His personality, everything was blossoming. He was doing an amazing job. So we're really excited about him. But he just he needs continued reps. And as that play strength increases, you're going to see more balance in his game and his ability to impact the point of attack a lot more.
Well, I want to ask you about guys who shadow. Obviously, Jalen Ramsey's got an expertise in shadowing. He's done it the majority of his career. What are the challenges that not only just the player who is shadowing gets presented, but also the guys around him who must adjust to what he's doing?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely more on the other guys than it is on the guy himself. Obviously, when you're shadowing, they have a very good player that you're trying to take away with your very good player. So there's that one-on-one matchup that, if you're doing that in a certain week, you're studying that matchup and you're trying to help with tendencies, you're trying to help with whatever little piece of information you can to help that one-on-one matchup be successful. But then for everybody else, the coaching that week goes into, okay, if this guy's in a stack or this guy's in a bunch, how are we playing this? Are you eliminating him, or when he's in those things, everyone's working together? You kind of have to go through the whole plan now, and your base rules have to adjust, and other people have to do different things, so their game plan changes too. Because instead of playing field boundary, if you're a corner, now you could be in the field, you could be in the boundary, you could be, however you are matching it up. So it definitely adds a lot of levels of variables. And
Matthew, I'm sorry, Omar.
So does that put the most pressure on the guy on the opposite side who has to adjust, or the nickel? I know Ramsey was in the nickel as well.
More pressure, that's all based on people and situation. I think the pressure on the guy matching is obviously winning his matchup. Like, when you do that, you're saying our game plan is determined on if you win your one-on-one matchup. That is going to be half of our game plan in the pass game, taking that away. And then the other half is the other guys being able to work off each other and, be successful. So if you do that in a given week, I'd say it's really even. You just have to do a good job at making it streamlined to where those guys you aren't adding stuff on their plate that takes away from them just playing the game.
Matthew, where is Ethan Bonner in his development, and what's he need to do to get himself in the game lineup?
Ethan has been awesome. First off, just a great person. He's a great teammate within the room. He shows up every single day and does what you ask him to do. So there's nothing that Ethan Bonner isn't doing right. That the situation is what it is. I would say in camp it started out him and Storm at the end of camp ended up battling for a spot, and then it comes down to roster numbers, and it's kind of ended up where Storm's been up more in the situations where we've had someone come up, and he's done a good job at his role, and that it's not as if Ethan hasn't. It's really just how the numbers have shaken out. But he's continued to progress. On the line of scrimmage, he's doing a great job. He gets obviously great reps every day going against some of the best receivers in the league. So he's getting better every day. Trust him, great tackler, communicates well. So he just keep steady on the track. It's kind of just the situation.
You have to have a conversation with him to make sure his
I try to make sure I do that with everybody. Even I got into coaching from experiences I've had where you didn't have that great communication. Or on the other side, you had coaches that communicated really well and they really had an impact on you as a player and, as a young guy in your life. So I always try to make sure as a coach, over-communicate. I'd rather him tell me, I know, you've already told me, than have him guessing and, play that mind game.
I know two coaches can look at the same two players and have different conclusions. And I don't want to pry too much on this because I certainly don't want to put you in a tough spot. But obviously, Vic viewed Ethan ahead of Cam Smith and Anthony and you in your position do not at this point, as you said, nothing against Ethan. But I did want to ask you this. What did Fangio like about Bonner that you liked as well that you want to build on that hasn't been built on this year in terms of game opportunities?
Yeah, I don't think there is anything that hasn't been built on this year. I think you could almost look at him and Storm in a similar situation. Ethan came in undrafted, did really well in what we were asking him to do. He was reliable, and he got opportunities. And the same situation arose this year, and there ended up being a competition, and that's just kind of how it shook out. But there is nothing that, and I was obviously here for both those years. They're different systems, but it's not even a system thing. It's more just circumstance, and there's different people in the room, and it shakes out different ways. But there's absolutely nothing against what he's been doing. His progress has been everything we've asked for.
Yeah, you guys on Sunday will see, in my opinion, the best back shoulder thrower in the history of this league. How difficult is it for a cornerback to be able to play the vertical route, but then be able to get back downhill on that back shoulder throw?
Yeah, it's extremely, extremely difficult. That's what makes corner one of, if not the hardest position in the league. I mean, and obviously with the receivers they have, there's a vertical threat aspect to the whole game, and they're really good on the line of scrimmage, so they create space. So it's something that we got to work on throughout the week, and I can promise you my arm is nowhere near as good of a look as what they'll get. But that's something we have to continue to train, and through technique, we try to put those guys in the best position to cover those and do a great job getting them out.
If I may, just a quick second question, totally different topic, but I understand you're wearing cleats this weekend for My Cause, My Cleats. You want to tell us about that?
Yeah, so ended up getting ones for breast cancer awareness. Both my mother and my mother-in-law have had breast cancer and have both surpassed it, so wearing it for them.
A great receiver matchup with, Devontae, Garrett Wilson. Kind of talk about them, what they do well, but then also what you are telling the guys to prepare them for Sunday.
Yeah. I think both of them, what you've seen with their offense since they've both been on the team is they are getting them the football. They're going to find ways to get them the football. That's their game plan to win, and with Breece Hall in the backfield. But they're going to get them the ball. What those guys do really well is create separation on the line of scrimmage. You see that whether guys are in press or obviously the relationship that they have with the quarterback, and that's improved each week. You know, they have a lot of subtle cues where they're just getting the ball out, getting it in space, and getting it out to them. So you got to be aggressive in the way of not allowing them just to freely move the ball down the field, but at the same time, when you do that, what does it give them? Now it gives them an opportunity to create space off the line of scrimmage, so we got to be really good on the line with our technique. And then obviously down the field, they're both dynamic, and they're both going to get their share of targets. So it's fun in preparation. Everybody is extremely locked in because of that. It makes a great week to prepare, but yeah, there's not many things they don't do well.
On your cleats, as I was going to ask you about that, obviously it's impacted your life. Was this for you the obvious cause for your cleats, and because of how it's impacted your life?
There's others. Unfortunately in my family I've had a lot of different sicknesses and things, and cancer being the biggest one. So it could have been more universal, but just felt like that for this year, that was kind of the approach I was going to. Yeah.